Well, it is my pleasure to welcome a good friend of mine from several years ago. Mr. Ricardo Cortazar is based out of Tempe, Arizona. Ricardo and I go way back, maybe 5, 6 years. Actually, it was around the time of COVID that Ricardo and I actually formally met each other at a conference. We were co-workers at the time, and we have learned so much from each other. We have attended several real estate conferences in the time that we've met each other. And one of the things that I would like to point out specifically is that Ricardo Cortazar has done a phenomenal job of branding himself. And we're going to speak today about how we help agents break through. And we are also going to speak about how, what are the common mistakes that real estate agents make where they just can't break through or they cannot get out of the rut that they are in. So it is my pleasure to welcome Ricardo. Ricardo, how are you today?
I am great, Jorge. Thank you very much for inviting me here to speak a little bit on your podcast. Happy to serve, happy to give some advice and things that have worked for me and a lot of the agents that I've coached, managed, and helped in the last 25 years.
So in the 25 years, you answered my next question, which is when did you start in real estate? And then was it something that you planned? Was it accidental? Or how did you get involved into real estate?
No, I wish I could say it was accidental, but you know what? Accidental, it did happen. I walked into a real estate development firm in Tucson, Arizona as a student at the University of Arizona, started working for the firm as a paid intern, saw exactly what they were doing there, loved seeing that they always showed up nicely dressed, polished vehicles. They spoke very eloquently. They always were closing on transactions. They were celebrating successes, at the end of the month, talking about sales. And that really intrigued me. And I said, you know what, that's something that I really want to dive a little bit more into and find out how I could be a part of something like that.
Fantastic. So that's how you entered into the real estate world. Tell us about your story. How did you go from then 25 years ago to who Ricardo Cortazar is today in the real estate world?
Well, it's not easy. It's not easy. And I'll tell you what, I think my parents came here to this country. I am a second generation immigrant from Mexico, born in San Luis, Rio Colorado, Sonora, which is the Mexican side of Mexico, of Arizona and Yuma and San Luis border itself. So I grew up in an area where there was a lot of opportunities for people that wanted to work in agriculture. My parents came over in the late 70s through the Bracero program. And luckily, my parents were able to immigrant and got us papers. My older brother and myself, the rest of my siblings were born here in the States. But through all that, how would you say, sacrifices that my parents took coming to this country, we have been blessed. All of my brothers and sisters are all decorated business people, whether they're in banking and real estate, working for big tech companies. We are blessed to be in this country of opportunity. And I am excited to share a little bit of what we've gone through as a family as we tell a little bit about the story. But peeling the onion back a little bit is, I'm going to tell you, we are hard workers. My father came from a school of hard knocks. So he taught us how to work hard with our backs and sweat. It wasn't until we got older at the age of 18 when we graduated high school that we realized that, hey, by the way, there's another way to work. And that was working smarter and not harder, which is getting a higher education, which is going to university, which is doing things a little bit different than what we were accustomed to. And it's made all the difference in the world.
Fantastic. So let's turn our attention to coaching real estate agents. And if you can share with me some of the commonalities amongst real estate agents that have a difficult time in breaking through in the business. Okay, that's one. And then the differentiation between the agents that actually break through and what are the commonalities amongst them. So let's focus on the individuals that have a difficult time breaking through and then the commonalities among those that have broken through.
I equate this, Jorge, it's a great question, by the way. I equate this to being a kid, and if your parent tells you, do it this way, I already know how to do that, Dad. I already know how to do that, Mom, right? But in real estate, it's a little bit different because the agents that struggle the most, to get their business off the ground are the ones that don't surrender to what we have to share. The more they fight a person that's trying to coach them, educate them, give them advice on how to change their business, are the ones that struggle the most. Conversely, the agents that say, okay, tell me, I'm going to pay you more money, but you tell me how to do it, and they listen, those are the ones that their business just takes off because they do all the things that we share. Hey, by the way, you got to prepare to make phone calls. You got to practice your scripts. You got to get out there and get people to meet you. You got to go out there and knock on doors. You got to go out there and do open houses. And when you do them, here's the process to actually do these open houses. So once again, going back to this, the agents that have the most difficult time to get business or traction in our industry are the ones that don't surrender to the process of wanting to go from mediocre or not selling anything to selling something. And let me just share a statistic with you, Jorge, that's National Association of Realtors. 71% of real estate agents last year, of the 1.5 million, did not sell one home last year.
Wow.
I
So,
can't tell you how many times agents that didn't show up to my office meetings, I always said, maybe you're getting coaching or advice on how to sell from somebody else.
so let's talk about that. Again, the theme of our podcast is breaking barriers from average to extraordinary, and there's a huge difference between the two. Let's talk about that. You obviously have a coaching background. You've developed
Mm-hmm.
some skill sets, et cetera, into coaching. Um, I I uh, I know for a fact that you pour yourself into those individuals and coaching them into production and helping them become extraordinary. But you just mentioned something that I believe is key, that individuals, instead of surrendering to what they need to do, they go and continue to look for solutions to make the process easier when there's not a simpler or an easier solution. Let's talk about that.
I got to share. I mean, there's a reason why we're sharing what we share to make the process easier for them. When somebody comes to you starting the business and they really want to know, it's like going to a mechanic. Hey, by the way, I want to be a mechanic, a good mechanic. Do you listen to the mechanic that's been there, that's got the veteran 10 years of experience? Or do you have a mechanic that's working in your car that just started? You got to put the work in.
Right.
And there's a way that the savvy mechanic's going to find out how to do certain things that the other person doesn't know. This is the same thing in real estate. When you open yourself to surrendering and listening to what people are willing to share with you, boy, does it become easier. Here's the other thing, that skill that works: listening. Because I'm going to tell you right now, our industry, we call ourselves salespeople. I just mentioned the statistic: 71% of the 1.5 million agents last year did not sell anything. We don't call them not salesmen. We call them salesmen still,
Right.
right?
Right.
But
It's
here's the other thing too. The agents that say that they're salespeople, they're not leaning into what makes a good salesperson. Would you believe it starts off by listening? If you sat down and said, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, is this the first time you've ever worked with the buyer's representative on the real estate you want to purchase? That's the first question I would ask. I want to find out if they're coming off something that was probably heated, that they fired somebody, because I don't want to be the next agent. Maybe they're a difficult client. And this is the experience that we have as real estate brokers, as managers, as leaders, as coaches, trainers. We have all these questions that we ask before we actually start dealing with the client. And an agent wants to hurry up, and because we live in an environment where everybody wants instant feedback.
right. We want that
You run
instant
a
feedback.
TikTok, you run a video. Hey, it looks like it's so easy. Why does it take so long?
Right. Right. So,
It
and
didn't take, it wasn't small. It took
well, and there's an
time.
investment of time, energy, and practice, et cetera, to make that platform successful, right? And a lot of patience, obviously. Uh, so it's a crowded field out there. Obviously, the statistics speak for themselves and gives us the explanation as to why we have uh, so many sources of mentoring, coaching, etc.? Because there's that 70, you mentioned, what is the statistic? 79%,
71%.
71%.
71% of agents last year did not sell one home.
So the difference between those that are not extraordinary and the ones that are extraordinary, obviously there is a commonality, and I think that there is coaching and bad coaching, right? um, or maybe they're just not investing or not paying attention to the investment of coaching that they're making. Tell us a little bit about the differentiation about the strategies out there. I mean, my experience, and this might be self-serving, as being a branch manager at a certain, for several years of my career, and pouring my heart and soul into helping our agents. And then there's other individuals that are just trying to uh, cash a check as a mentor and not necessarily interested in the well-being and success of that individual. And I'm being sincere here. I believe that there's phenomenal coaches out there. So this is not a jab at anybody specifically. I just want to be able to highlight for a real estate agent to do the research, uh, uh, to investigate, interview, and really look at the character of the individual that is leading them and then coaching them. So let's talk about that. Can you share some of your experiences related to that? Because I know that you have served as a manager as well for many years.
Yes. So the coaching is big, and I'm going to share something that maybe people can understand. Maybe you have a child that's in soccer or baseball. You take them at the first, get together to do a practice. There's a coach. And if they listen to the coach, chances are they get better at their craft. And if they practice more with that coach, or they get private coaching, they even get more proficient at what they're doing. That's where pros come in.
Mm-hmm.
You start at a very young age being taught. That's why you go to school as well. And people think that when you're done with high school and college, that's all the schooling that you get. I'm going to tell you that my coach that's been doing this for 40 plus years also has a coach,
Mm-hmm.
because he can't be good at everything. So I'm going to tell you right now that people are afraid to invest resources, their own money, into getting better at their craft. But people will invest a lot of money to look nice, right? People will invest a lot of money in getting the fanciest car to look nice, but then you don't have the skill set to come behind everything else. But if you were coached, if you were taught, and you know exactly how to actually be really good at your craft, you'd have all those other things. People look for the wrong things sometimes, the lost heroes, like we call them. Coaching helps you do everything else, because when you're coached and you actually do the work. A lot of people are afraid to do the work. I'm going to share an analogy that I use all the time, or a saying that we always talk about. The magic that people are looking for their business to take off is in the magic's in what people won't do that they have to do in order to be successful. And I'm going to break it down. Sometimes the magic is making the phone calls to people that you don't want to call.
Right.
Sometimes the magic is showing up to a networking event, and I know you're tired, but you know what? You show up, and what are the chances that because you walked in and you were the most interested person as opposed to the most interesting person, somebody there said, hey, you know what, Ricardo? I'd like for you to represent my family. We just moved here from a different state, and my employer has me here, and they told me to go to this networking event to meet people. That's the magic. And a lot of agents don't want to do any of the hard work. They think that if I buy leads, if I go out and work with the company that's going to give me and sell me leads, 98% of the leads nowadays aren't worth anything. You pay for them, but it's about 2% that actually get to fruition or get consummated to a sale.
So there's no substitution for networking, being interesting, and being interested in other people, right?
Correct. There is no substitution for hard work. I'm going to tell you, real estate is still been and still will always be a relationship business. You're getting ready to ask somebody to represent them in the highest price dollar amount that they've ever spent. Don't you think they want to know a little bit about you in person, how you actually work, how you treat people, how you show up, how you dress?
So there's value in the network in the real estate sector, but there's also more value in networking outside of your real estate sector. A lot of people use the word industry. We don't build widgets. It's real estate as a profession, and I'd like to be able to put that out there that you need to stop treating real estate as an industry because it's a profession, and when you think about it as a profession, you start behaving accordingly. Let's talk about
I think you said
networking.
it best.
Well,
Profession. Isn't that professionals?
it's a profession, and therefore we need to treat it as behave as professionals. So networking. I know that in the real estate profession and in the sector, and we're talking about there's association of realtors, there's other associations that put a lot of educational events, and there's a lot of networking. I know that there's an opportunity to build from networking, but what is the challenge of networking in your same uh, in your backyard where that's your farm versus networking in other areas? And then we'll talk about networking in your backyard, but in different sectors.
Networking in your backyard is like we say, going for the low hanging fruit first, the easy ones. If people don't even know you in your backyard, why would you go outside of your yard? If you can't be the neighborhood expert in your own neighborhood, why are you selling somewhere else? It's the easy one. Work on some of the easy factors first where people get to know you. Hey, by the way, did you have any questions regarding my experience with clients? Because I have a couple of recommendations for people in my immediate subdivision where I've sold and bought for them. Can I share those with you? You'll never have those because you're outside of your scope or outside of your comfort zone. I'm gonna
So to clarify, and sorry to interrupt you there, Ricardo. When it comes to networking in your backyard, your chambers of commerce networking events, maybe there is um, something that maybe your PTA. There's an opportunity for you to network, and when you especially if there's a fundraiser, and you maybe donate something to your school's PTA fundraiser. It gives you an opportunity to talk about your profession or your business, which in this case would be real estate. But networking outside of your of your area for the intent of generating referral business, that's where the importance of attending these national events and statewide events to be able to build a network of real estate agents. I'm just very proud of the fact that I can put a name or a town, and I know someone in that specific town. You and I know people in Atlanta, Georgia. You and I know people in Miami. You and I know people in Chicago. You and I know people in San Francisco. Obviously, that's practically my backyard. But I know for
yeah.
a fact the best real estate agent in Tempe, Arizona, which is Ricardo Cortazar. So let's talk about that a little bit in your experience when it comes to, diff- you know, to prioritize based on what you're going to be getting out of and what your intent is to get out of that networking.
Well, you don't just go in there with expectations to actually get something out of the network. Remember, networking is about paying it forward first. How can you be of service to somebody so that they can remember you and how gracious you were to always refer you as well in return? So a lot of people, I think, network ineffectively by going and expecting something out of it. I got to tell you, I've gone to a lot of networking events. People are like, hey, my name is such and here's my card, and I'll talk to you later. And they think it's speed networking. And I'm thinking, look, I didn't hear anything about them. I usually follow up with them hey, you know what? It was really brief how we met. I know you said that you deal in the insurance business, but I wanted to see what is an ideal client for you if I came across somebody that like that. And like nobody's ever asked me that. Well, I work with nothing but specific these kind of clients. I go, yeah, I didn't get to hear that day. All right, so now I know a little bit more about that person. But people network ineffectively, and sometimes less is more because you don't have to service everybody because you're going to get really bad at that. You can't service everybody. But if you work on a subgroup of people that are really good referral sources, that's where your business is going to take off.
So, what would you, And switching a little, gears a little bit, what would you credit? And it actually kind of goes along the way of what we're talking about as far as the networking, because there's a huge connection to that as far as your success. Um, how did you get to the point where you are today? And who was your mentor? Who did you align yourself with? What were the questions that you asked in order for you to be able to become extraordinary?
Well, thank you for that question. And I'm going to share that I've had a lot of mentors along the way in my 25 years of real estate experience. But my first mentors are obviously my parents, to always do good, always do the right thing. Don't do something for just the money. Be happy with what you're doing. Those are the things that have always been hallmarks in our family for all my brothers and sisters. So with that, you are never looking over your shoulder. Oh my God, I'm going to find out that's not me. If you're your authentic self, you'll never have to reinvent yourself when you're in front of somebody. I got to tell you, there's a lot of agents on social media that if you caught them one day, they won't act the same way they act on social media, because sometimes it's just a farce, or they're putting on a skit on social media. But when you're authentic, people know. You remember. I take notes. If somebody makes an impression on me, because most of the time that's what happens, and I look for that. I write something on a card and I take notes. By the way, this day that I went, this person's kid is going to the University of Arizona. I mentioned that I knew somebody there, that the Alumni Association, that might be able to help them with a scholarship. And then I sent him an email. Hey, by the way, thought of you. I know we talked about this opportunity. Here's some information on the University of Arizona. Here's the alumni group that pertains to that area. You should, contact them to see if there's an opportunity for a scholarship. Oh my God. So I just paid it forward. Those are the effective networkings. Ricardo, I'm a real estate broker. If you ever find yourself in need of selling or buying real estate, or have any friends and family that are looking to buy real estate, I hope you can think of.
So, thank you for sharing that, Ricardo. Going back to the purpose of this podcast and our goal to help real estate agents break barriers in going from average to extraordinary. Assuming that the mentor, assuming that the manager has an individual's best interest in mind. Okay, we're just not talking about a jerk. We're just talking about someone that absolutely has an individual's best interest in mind. What should a real estate agent that wants to improve their results, what do they have to be willing to accept and receive from that mentor in the form of advice? And you and I spoke about this earlier because we were comparing notes about some questions that I asked of an individual that you and I know as to what their goals in real estate were. Tell me a little bit about what would an authentic mentor say or share with someone, and what is it that they're not going to do?
First and foremost, I always ask the mentee coming in for our first meeting, what do you expect to get out of our first meeting today? Because I want to set expectations to see what they are expecting to come out the first. Because I don't want them to come in with expectations. Well, I'm going to get a client. I'm going to find out how to sell people to sell people this way. I want to first find out more about them. What are their pain points? Why are they in the industry? Who do they know? How are they actually marketing right now if they are? And once I find out and they tell me what they expect to get out of there, then we could at least work on one or two of those items so that they can at least feel like, okay, I got something good out of this. He's going to help me do this, going to help me do that. But that's it. You can't do everything on the first meeting. Right. And you always have to have realistic expectations. I can't tell you how many times agents sit across the table from me and say, I want to make $100,000 a year. So I say, okay, well, is that something that's going to be on your top to-do list? Yes. Well, have you made $40,000 this year selling real estate? No. How about we start there? Well, why? I want to make $100,000. Well, you don't know how hard it is to work to get 40 first. So I always start off with reaching a goal that's achievable, because $100,000 in the industry, in our profession, is not that easy. if you don't have a good contact database of clients that you worked with in the past that trust you.
So,
So those are some of the things that I talk to agents about. First is, let's talk what real expectations are of you, and how hard are you willing to work in order to get there. Will you lean in to what I recommend?
so what has been the toughest piece of advice that you have ever received that ended up being the most valuable?
Telling agents the truth. A lot of managers tiptoe because in real estate, keep in mind, they're all independent contractors. As a manager, you can't tell them, straight out how you feel, because when I used to do that, when I first started in business in the profession, I used to tell agents, by the way, you're not good at this, you're not good at that. They'd get offended, they disassociate their license from my office. So now I got to ask them, hey, can I tell you the truth to help you succeed? Or do you want me to tell you something to just, keep you okay and you'll be happy? Can I tell you the truth? I'm asking for your permission. And when they tell you, yes, please tell me the truth. Okay, here's what I would do if I was in your shoes. I think you and I crossed it a couple of times where I had agents in my office that, even if you're a female, you still have to have or maintain a level of professionalism, even the way you carry yourself or the way you dress, because it's still a profession. But some of these people don't follow the rules and think that in our profession, we can do pretty much whatever we want, show up dressed up like, we're going out to a club and expect to get good clients. I had to have a hard conversation with an agent. They didn't like it. They moved their license. Even though I asked, can I get your permission to share what I think would change? Because you're missing out on opportunities with clients with good incomes and, pretty good opportunities to sell them $1 million houses. But I got to tell you, most of these $1 million clients have are married, and their spouses wouldn't appreciate the way you show up to meetings. And they didn't like it.
And it's painful
So
because,
sometimes you got to have, it's painful, but sometimes, Jorge, I would much rather share the truth than mask it, and then they never succeed or learn.
right. And then, so the huge difference of keeping people in the dark with the intent of just keeping them so you can gain something out of them, or being truthful and helping them grow with the intent of helping them succeed. Huge
Mm-hmm.
difference, right? And it's a tough,
Very.
very, very tough job. When people ask me, do you enjoy your job, Jorge? I said, I know and I knew what I signed up for, and I enjoy every single moment of it, the ups and downs. Is it painful? Absolutely. Is it awkward at times? Yes, it is awkward, because you have to, when you have someone's best interest in mind, you have to, and I hate to use this expression because I'm not somebody's, I am the father of 4 kids. My wife and I have 4 kids, but I have to I've had to had conversations with my kids that are very, very tough. And I've had those conversations with real estate agents that are very, very tough, again, with the intent of ensuring that they're doing the right thing for themselves and for the consumers that they serve. Um, Ricardo, I would like for you to close out this segment with a few words of wisdom in the young. You're a very young person. You have a lot of years of experience, but still relatively young in comparison to what the industry has to offer. Please share with us. Sorry, I I misspoke. What this profession has to offer. I have to retrain myself as well. Give us some few words of advice.
Okay. Well, words of advice in what category?
um, Being in a real estate agent, in order for them to go from, you know, trying to break through and being exceptional, and what is it that they need in order for them to be coachable?
Okay. Great. Thank you. All right. If I had the silver bullet for an agent to be successful, every single time I tell them, I say, by the way, what is the number one big idea that you have right now that you heard that will take your business from here to up here? And they tell me the idea. I said, okay, then go ahead and pile on that idea, but heavy. Don't do it half. I'm going to get to it tomorrow. I'm going to do it next week. I mean, you pile it on and immediately fast and heavy. People spread themselves thin. They think they have to be everywhere because somebody said they got to do social media, they got to do posts every day, they got to do this, got to do that. By the way, that helps. But if you have an idea that's going to take your business to a different level, you really pile on heavy on that one idea, and that's what's going to change your entire business. Because I have agents that start one thing and they end up never finishing it because they start other things too. In real estate is a good starter, good finisher profession. If you're not good at starting something and not good at finishing it, you're going to struggle. I
Follow through.
always ask, well, the follow through is big because keep in mind, we are looking for a transaction to start and to close. We open escrow, we close escrow. So if you're not good at taking care of the start and the finish, what good are you going to be? And I always ask that question when they sit down with me because they think they're just coming in and interview me. I got to ask that question too. I got to ask, have you started anything? Do you have any designations in real estate? Well, I started this. Did you finish it? Not yet. When do you plan on finishing it? Let me write that down. And I write it down for them. And then when we're done with our interview, I said, hey, here's the thing that you said you were going to do. I think we should start on these. And
So
they're like, man, I need accountability. That's what I need.
it's so valuable. I'm going to share a story with you to end the segment, and it has exactly to do with follow through. I started my career working for a real estate broker, and eventually I became a certified escrow officer. But one of my first experiences in the escrow world as an escrow assistant entailed a situation where um, I was responsible for generating a report, an accounting report for the escrow administrator for the company in the county that I started out my escrow career with. And
Mm-hmm.
I was given my walking papers over the allegation that I had not followed through with a task. And it was such an important lesson for me. I knew that I had completed the task, but I didn't take the additional steps to ensure that it was recorded correctly, the lack of follow through in that specific end. And since then, I have committed myself, and this is almost, more than 30 years, where I needed to learn the process of starting or finishing what I started and doing it correctly and having it done in a way that nobody would ever question my integrity, my follow through, and professionalism. So, once again, Ricardo, thank you so much for joining me today, all the way from Tempe, Arizona. And I look forward to speaking about other subject matters related with helping agents break through and becoming extraordinary agents, because the statistics as you spoke, where um, only what 29% close a transaction in 2024, um, leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah. So I don't know what, one of those, it's close to 1 million agents that didn't sell something last year, what they did. But we are called salespeople, not salespeople. I'd recommend that everybody listen to your podcast. If you take something and you're intentional about listening to today's podcast, be intentional about getting some serious coaching.
So we will talk a lot about that on the next segment, and we'll go ahead and announce that when it's recorded and published. But our goal is, again, taking our agents, breaking that barrier from average to extraordinary. And unfortunately, not having a sale is not average. Okay, average sales transaction according to NAR statistics is 4 transactions a year to be average. And in order for you to be extraordinary, you have to be more than that. And if we can help you succeed, and this is we're not asking you for anything other than giving this serious consideration. If you are successful and we had something to do with that, that in itself is going to make this podcast a total success. With that said, guys, have a great day and go out there and make your phone calls. Go follow through and don't try to reinvent the wheel because the most successful people out there, they just have systems in place and they just follow through.